Senator, thank you for being here.
You're most welcome. Glad to do so.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to meet you, and I'm thrilled to talk about something that's so important to you, which is the housing shortage here in Minnesota. And you have something to talk about the soft costs specifically. You've said that they're part of what's stopping our progress from addressing the issue. And I know you work in real estate outside of here, so you're very familiar with the conversation, the issues, the players. So what are you hearing about the need for more housing here in Minnesota?
Well, I think housing is an issue whether you're in Metro, whether you're in Greater Minnesota. It really doesn't matter. There's a lack of housing, and many times a lack of affordable housing. I mean, we have seen costs or values of homes increase at such a rapid rate in recent years. Part of that, of course, is due to the cost of new construction. As new construction costs go up, it drives the price of existing homes up as well. And so it makes it much more difficult for a young person to get into the housing ownership situation. And at the end of the day, we always have to remember that the home is one of the greatest opportunities for an individual to build equity and start to build wealth. And it's important that people have the opportunity to invest in a home. And so we need to work at every level of government to say, okay, what are we doing to impede people from getting into home ownership?
And to that point, you're saying soft costs are impeding that. So what are those? That's not a term I'm familiar with.
Well, soft costs are those regulatory costs that come into play that might add costs to financing, add costs to development. If you add cost to development, now you're raising the price of the lot for an individual to buy and on which to build a new home. If you're also looking at some of the building codes, as we add things there that make it more restrictive or make it more expensive to build a house. And obviously building codes are intended to provide for a safer home, and we all understand that. Sometimes people, the public especially, says, really? And so I think we need to examine everything, quite frankly, to determine where these soft costs are playing an undue role in the cost of our homes, construction and or ownership.
Yeah, they're called soft costs, but they cost hard money, right? So
that's exactly right.
What kind of impact do they have on housing affordability?
Well, I look at, for example, lot development. In recent years, we've seen a lot of things that have happened. Many communities will add a cost per lot for the availability of a green space or park area in a development. We see other costs that are implemented. Sometimes it's in the development costs for street lights, etc. And there's always been the costs of development have always included, for example, installing a street, extending utilities. That's always been a natural part of lot development. But it's all these extras that have come into play that at one point were generally assumed by the community. And as the community expanded, they would then expend the money that was necessary for the parks. And now they're seeing this as a source of revenue and adding it to the costs of the development. So as a result, if I go back to when I was the mayor of Laverne, we had not had any new residential lot development in Laverne for roughly 20 years. And so when we became the site of the Veterans Nursing Home, we bought extra land and actually developed some residential lots. Those lots at that time sold from $12,000 to $14,000, $15,000. Today, lots are selling from $40,000 to $70,000. Now in Laverne, being a smaller community, we're roughly 5,000 people. We don't have a lot of the extra fees that we see having been developed in the suburban areas to the metro. And so as a result, You know, it's not unusual to find residential lots up here, just a basic lot, nothing wooded or with aesthetic features that would distinguish it, for selling for $100,000 or more. And so, and by the time, okay, you have a $100,000 lot, you have a 1,500 square foot house. Now you've added almost $70 a square foot to the cost of that house. And so it gets to be a challenge.
Sounds like it. So if it's being used as a source of revenue, you know, where is that money going? Who's seeing the benefit of that?
In most instances, I would say that it's going into the general fund, and so all taxpayers of the community should be seeing a benefit of it. But then there are other features, for example, such as building inspector costs. A community has to have a building inspector to ensure that the home is being built to code. We've seen some of those costs raised substantially. And originally it was always the intent of enabling legislation that those kind of costs were to cover the cost of providing the service. It was not supposed to be a profit center for a unit of government. And I think sometimes as we look at those costs, one has to question whether that is being used as a profit center.
Absolutely. Well, to that end, you've authored Senate File 4749, which is bipartisan, and it's a task force on housing, taxes, and fees. So talk to me how that is part of this conversation.
Well, I think we talk about these things in general, and so but the conversation becomes somewhat disjointed. You know, we talk about this part of it over here. You know, if you get into building codes and what have you, now you're talking with the Department of Labor and Industry, and if you get into park development and or some of the issues revolving around water, et cetera. Now we're into a different state agency. And I think by themselves, they look somewhat innocuous, but as you start to add all these costs together, all of a sudden the price tag becomes substantial. And I'm not trying to blame local governments here. I mean, I served 16 years as a councilman and a mayor. So quite frankly, as we look at these type of things, you know, a lot of it is because of the mandates and the rules and regulations that the state passes down. And particularly now we also included in this legislation talk about fees and taxes. Quite frankly, it's no secret, anybody that owns a home, owns a commercial property, owns farmland, the increase in real estate taxes in recent years has been substantial. Now, I always used to tell people real estate taxes are nothing more, with the exception of commercial, industrial, and seasonal recreational, for which the state gets some money because of the state general levy that's applied against those kind of properties. Everything else is pretty much a summary of your local taxes. That would be city and or township, county, school district, maybe watershed, you know, a few other ancillary things. And to many and that the state is not responsible for those. However, as a result of the last 3 years, I can no longer say that. With the mandates that the state has placed on our schools, the shifting of costs of government-provided services from the state to our counties, quite frankly, the state legislature is now responsible for much of the current increase in our real estate taxes. And it is our local units of government that are going to take the blame for that. But quite frankly, I personally believe that blame belongs up here in St. Paul.
You keep talking about local government, so they obviously have a role in this conversation. Have you heard from them regarding your bill?
I have not really, but because within the makeup of the committee, out of 16 members, we have representatives from county, from cities, and their organizations to be involved in this. So they will have a seat at the table.
What do you hope to accomplish with this task force? Do you want to suss out some of the areas where those costs are not going to cover services? Maybe they're going above and beyond that, or looking to take back some of that. Like, what are you looking to do?
Well, I would hope that the next legislative session would be able to take this information and, number one, reevaluate its own responsibilities in this increase of costs. And then also work with our local communities to say, okay, what are we forcing you to do that is making you have to charge these kind of fees for this kind of development? And hopefully manage to bring the cost of these fees down. I think that the next legislature, and of which I will not be a part as I am retiring this year, we'll be able to take a look at what is accumulated here. And actually, I think for some people it will be eye-opening to see what the total cost of these fees actually are in the price of a new home.
You talk about what's happening here in St. Paul, and there are lots of agencies here based in St. Paul, state agencies, that could gather this information, like the Department of Revenue or the Housing Finance Agency. So why would your task force be a better place to gather this info?
At this point in time, I've never seen a collection of that information from all these different agencies. And I think what it's going to take is a legislative committee to say, okay, you bring us what your costs are, you bring us what your costs are, and actually put them together. And also at that point in time, it provides the legislature what should I say, an unbiased view because of the people that have been involved in the process. I think sometimes governmental agencies can become somewhat defensive and maybe even as a legislator, it's sometimes hard to get the data that you ask for.
Definitely. This conversation about housing affordability in Minnesota is bigger than just soft costs, as you know. Your committee, the Taxes Committee, heard Senate File 4262, which is a bipartisan bill which would create a different task force, but this one is on property taxes. So what are your thoughts on that piece of the puzzle?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think the state of Minnesota has to accept greater responsibility in terms of the increase in property taxes that we have seen. And for example, in the last 3 years, as I visit with the superintendents of my schools, the state has placed over 80 new mandates on them. And some of them are very expensive. And as a result, our schools are looking at running deficits. And so their choice to deal with a deficit is one of two. They either cut programs and staffing, or they raise their levy. So in both cases, they're going to hurt the family unit because they're going to take money out of the family budget for the increase in the property taxes, or there's going to be less options for our students in schools.
So lots of areas for exploration to help with this housing crisis. Both your bill and 4262 are bipartisan. Do you think that housing is one of those areas that just invites collaboration?
Well, I believe so. I mean, all of us, like I said, it's an issue no matter where we go, and there's a shortage of housing no matter where we go. Up in the metro area, it seems like, well, let's build a new apartment house. However, I don't necessarily think that that's the best option for the public. It is for a temporary start, and for some people, they never want to own a home, and that's fine. But like I said, it still remains our best option for people to develop wealth and build equity, and we need to try to encourage that amongst our people.
Earlier, when you were talking about building wealth and equity, you said, we got to get the young people into homes. And it made me chuckle because I know that the median age now is 40, which not everyone would consider young. I do, of course.
Well, trust me, at my age, it looks younger and younger all the time. So,
the fact that both of these bills are bipartisan, does that give you confidence that they have a chance at passing this session?
I would think so. And whether they pass individually as part, I don't hold out any great hope for omnibus bills, to be honest about it. But I think that if there's enough interest from both sides of the aisle, that certainly these bills could manage to get through. And as there's bipartisan authorship, I believe there will certainly be a bipartisan vote on the floor to approve them. And quite frankly, I think it's also a good opportunity for the legislature to recognize maybe we shouldn't be hiding everything in omnibus bills.
And I like that your bill has like a hard sunset date. The working group or task force finishes at this time. So it really seems very sensible and focused. So perhaps that'll help get it over that finish line. Final question to you, sir.
Yes.
If you had carte blanche to solve Minnesota's housing crisis, what would you do?
The first thing I would do is, at the state level, is evaluate every program that's out there and every rule and regulation that we have passed that affects local units of government, that affects the construction trades, and start there. And then I would reach out to local units of government and say, now you need to do the same thing. And state's really good about going to local units of government and telling them what to do, and not necessarily doing it themselves.
So maybe it's time for the state to listen.
That's right.
All right. Senator, thank you for the conversation, your time, and your service here in the Senate.
You're most welcome. Pleased to meet with you.